Good afternoon, everyone. So let me take you through this journey that I have. I want to give you a little bit about myself. I think that will help and it will hone in the point that connection is really everything. So I've been in Asia for 13 years. I studied law, oddly went from law into oil and gas, and then by a twist of fate, ended up in digital technical advertising. The reason I'm sort of giving you a little bit of detail around me is because hopefully it'll help around the rest of the slides, but I think connection is so important. And as we speak to clients, as we speak to internal stakeholders, trying to build that connection digitally is always tough. In person, you can always go for a coffee. Digitally, it's a little harder to do. I've led businesses in the region with Yahoo, with Google, and also with Twitter. And now I'm leading a pre-IPO company called Quantcast. So funny story, in the UK, there is a brand called Qualcast. And I had phoned my father up to explain to him that I'd joined this company. It was pre-IPO, amazing leadership. And he didn't quite hear me and thought it was Qualcast and was quite happy and sort of explained to me, amazing, I'd love to get a discount on my next lawnmower. So it was kind of one of those funny stories that I used to bond and create some level of connection with clients and with internal stakeholders, because I think what is difficult is to really be able to bring that connection to that next level, which is to almost be sort of 3D, if you like, if we're talking from a digital world. So that's a little bit about myself. I actually joined Quantcast in January 2020 during the time of unprecedented change. So not only had I joined the company, I had gone over to headquarters, which is in San Francisco, and met C-level and had engaged around what we were going to do for my region, and came back and everything was under lockdown. I literally was just back in time before everything went to lockdown. And I only had, I think, about 10 interactions, 10 face-to-face days with my team. Again, I was new to the company before everything went to digital. So for me, I think the biggest challenge I had was leading. I've come from all sorts of backgrounds. If you think about law and oil and gas, absolutely not futuristic at all businesses, but moving into Google and the other companies, digital first, but not necessarily digital first with consumers, especially in our region. So I was always wearing this delicate hat of being able to take the kind of all the naming conventions when it comes to digital applications and then placing them into layman's terms. What was difficult in this situation was not building that bridge of connectivity to this wide team that I inherited, who didn't actually know who I was, who didn't have an understanding of how we could build our future together with the company. And for me, I think this was probably the most toughest experience I've had leading a business, especially since all of Asia reports into me. So I think the first thing I had to do was to really understand each individual in my team. And that meant just building hours. I mean, literally every week I'd have an hour's one-to-one session with each individual in the team, and then starting to understand what is it that makes them who they are, and almost unpeeling the onion. Because I think the point that a few people have already made in the chat box, there is no one set rule. And I think Mathilde and also Mira bring this to point when we think about different models that are in place. Even though I've worked at various other large businesses, there is no one set rule. And often I kind of look to the businesses that I manage within the larger organizations, or even in the smaller one, almost as my own business unit. The reason for that is your culture has to come from your leadership. And if you don't bring in that culture, I think what tends to happen is that, especially since we don't sit in headquarters, there's an artificial allegiance to whatever the culture has been put within headquarters for the rest of the regions. So I think there needs to be that humanistic touch point between headquarters and businesses that are sitting outside of headquarters. There needs to be that additional touch point for smaller businesses, which I'm in now, because I'm effectively HR, legal, repping all the sales talent, the technical talent, and everything in between. And I think that that's something that has to be taken with the right mindset. And for me, I think the hardest thing here was I wasn't able to do that from a point of view where it was face to face. It had to be online. How did I bridge that? So because we had two elements that we engage with. We obviously engage with our team, we engage with headquarters, which is always virtual, and then we engage with our clients. My team is very digitally focused. That's exactly what the business I'm in. We basically are an AI platform that sells digital media ads to other companies. And so we knew that the team was digitally savvy, but we didn't know whether they were going to be savvy when it came to a one-to-one relationship or a multiple relationship online. And one of the challenges I had initially was getting people to put their cameras on. So we tried this a couple of times, and of course, they hadn't bonded with me. They didn't know me. So what I did was I essentially decided that the only way I can connect is to, one, be authentic and let my guard down, and come up with fun and innovative ways to get people to put their cameras on without demanding it. Because if I'm demanding it, what's going to happen is you're going to see resistance. And that then starts changing the narrative of what you want to do from a leadership point of view. So I sat back and I created 3 days a week where we would connect officially about work. It would be a half an hour session to an hour session. And in those 3 days, we would suggest fun elements that could just make it a little bit more interactive. So one of those days would be everybody has to wear a certain hat, any hat they want from their home. They have to wear it while they're having this 30-minute connectivity session with the team. The second one was your favorite T-shirt, be it your football team or be it your favorite hawker stand in Singapore. So we use that to be able to create some type of digital culture. And for me, it worked really well because I was able to connect beyond that leadership level, but to the point where, because it was hooked into certain elements around what we need to do as a business, there was a artificial line drawn about, we can have that fun few minutes, but we're going to get back into that workload that we need to talk about. So we kind of used that as a technique. There were other elements that I'll kind of talk you through, but I think the winning one was really a session every Friday at around 3:30 to 4 p.m. And because we used to, we have alcohol carts that go around on a Friday late afternoon, because people tend to overwork in the tech world as well. So we would initially do a couple of things. We would have a session every week, one individual. And of course, in Asia, we tend to be a little bit more shy than we are in sort of Europe when it comes to sharing. So I decided a good approach to the cultural challenges of leadership, especially in a remote environment, would be to force every single one through a fun activity to present something about themselves. So we did, I think it was within the second month, we actually kicked off a recommendation Friday session, where people can recommend anything they want. It can be, a robot vacuum cleaner. It can be things that you use at home, places you want to travel to, books that you've read. And by that, we were able to, one, get over the hurdle of other people wanting to, be camera shy or not be able to talk. But also we started connecting and having bridges connected to each other. One thing I failed to share with you earlier on is 50% of my team was hired maybe 2 months before I was hired. So I also had to ensure that there was connections being built with team members who had to interact on a daily basis. So that was one of the areas. The big hit for us was that lull period that was essentially around, I think it must have been around June, July, and we'd just gone into lockdown in March in Singapore, where we decided to then move to sort of a bucket list. So we started a bucket list of no more than 15 slides where people could put in where they'd like to travel, where they've been to that they may want to travel again to. And that was really well received because people started thinking about other things outside of their work temperament. And that then led to really easy meetings on the following Monday or the rest of the week, which kind of, took in some of those nuggets and were able to then use them as hooks to kind of connect with other individuals. I think that was really a really winning formula for us. And I'm particularly proud of that because I'd never been in this position before, and I had to go back and think about what am I going to do to drive authenticity when people don't even know who I am. So there's no guideline on who I am, let alone how I can be authentic on top of it. So I decided that I was going to put that all in one bucket and actually utilize that to be able to progress ahead. And fortunately for us, I'm actually very proud of this, but fortunately for us, we didn't lose a single member of staff. There was a lot of geopolitical, if you'll remember, a lot of geopolitical tensions with large companies like ByteDance, TikTok, Tencent coming into our region. And of course, they would be prime competitors to us when it comes for retention and talent. So that was something that was really, really quite pivotal in my thought process around retention, recruitment, and performance. Those are the three things that I started with, and then I'll explain to you how I progressed with them. I think this is a really important quote by Michael van der Bell, who's the president of Microsoft EMEA. It's taken from 2018, but there's some really interesting nuggets in here. And one of them, which I think is absolutely critical, is this one here. Think about it as a people journey. With Gen Z entering the labor market, many companies have 5 generations of talent in the workplace, which is unprecedented. And I think this is really an important point here because I've come from the UK and obviously have managed there and come into Asia and spent majority of my time managing in Asia, actually. But one of the things that I've also learned is previously, if I was in the UK, whatever your manager said, you never asked any other question, but I'll get it done. And when do you need it by? Coming to our region, and of course, generations now being changed, there is a lot more of a process around validation of why. And I think, that Simon Sinek will always ask that question in his book, which is, that why question is so important. We were taught it as children and then pestered our parents, but we kind of somehow failed to remember that as we end up becoming managers. I think this is absolutely critical. The reason for it is you need to take people on a journey. And of course, from the companies I've worked at, bar the law company and the oil and gas company, there was always a set vision. And in order to get the best out of individuals, we had to be very critically aligned around what is the mission statement, what is the vision of the company, and how are we going to orchestrate that at a local level or within a large company at a business department level. So I think for me, this has been really important because no one set strategy is going to work for everyone. You're going to have levels of resistance when it comes to perhaps a more experienced generation that don't necessarily need to turn the cameras on, that are happy to have the conversation without cameras. But as we all know, almost 90% of communication is nonverbal. So I think that's something that, us in the digital world, from a client perspective, had to battle with. One of my biggest challenges is being able to take my digital enhanced product and put my vision on top of it, which is to break it down into what does it mean in real world, and what do we need to explain from a layman's point of view to the client that we're talking to, who needs to understand the back-end technology of why we're differentiated versus someone else. And so the only way we can do that is by making sure we've got cameras on with our clients, which didn't happen. So what we had to do in this situation, to be quite honest with you, was to work out ways that we could help to incentivize that. And some of that would be, if we can get cameras on and individuals from clients asking questions, we would supplement them with a Deliveroo or a Food Panda voucher for lunch they could use another time. So we were thinking about ways that we could engage that were far beyond just the kind of Zoom call conversation. As we all know, there is Zoom fatigue. after 15, 20 minutes, people, they've topped out on their learning. So that was one way. Another way was to come up with quizzes that actually interacted with the clients first, with obviously some type of incentive, nothing to do with work. And then that step 2 was very much around, it was lovely to meet you, and now could we sort of have a 30-minute session with you? What are your needs? That we saw an impressive engagement. I think we went from essentially new business had jumped by almost 45 to 50% by just making that small change and connecting. So going back to that initial screen initial PowerPoint slide I showed you, connection is everything. Even though we're going to be digitally connected, we've got to find ways to get to that bridge of connection. And so that really brings me on to that next slide, which is pivoting to digital and building our culture in this new world. I think Mathilde did an excellent job of taking us through kind of ADCAR modeling and really being able to underpin those, I think, 5 sections around awareness and desire and so forth. Obviously, in the smaller companies, we don't necessarily think in that manner. We're much more agile in nature, but our clients aren't as agile. So we've got to always have this kind of duopic, if you like, line of visibility as to what's going to resonate internally and how do we capture external signals to be able to make sure that those points are resonating to the external audiences, be it clients who are perhaps resisting change. We're also in a very interesting position where some of the individuals, stakeholders we talk to may feel that our platform will disintermediate their roles. So it's got to be very, very personable. Interpersonal connection is key for that, to explain to them that is not the case. It's about driving efficiencies, to really leverage the ways that you would connect with someone offline and just think about different ways that you can connect with them online. And I think once you can get to that, I think you've really then started to unpeel the onion as to how do you get and onboard others along the journey. I had resistance levels when it came to, what is this bucket list? We're not going to be able to travel for X amount of years. But because we were able to gently coax our team to do that, they then use their own version to drive that engagement with their clients. And the great thing about that was not only did we interconnect, but we then did something that was quite extraordinary. And I'd inherited this problem from previous management, which was we were always a silo team. So we never actually interconnected with headquarters as much. We never interconnected with the Australia team as much. And because we started this, we then kind of pushed it to invite a few others from other markets into this process. And we then built that connectivity across other markets. So I think it's really important to think about the development of something that you start as as something that's a personal issue that you have. For me, it was driving that connectivity with my team, developing that, learning from that, and then enhancing that to allow you to drive an interaction, not only with your own team, but a collaboration with multiple teams and potential clients. So I think these are the things that were really, really important as I took this journey with my team. I think the other thing is really, we haven't really talked about it here, but there is always that question, and you get this line of resistance. I certainly got it from my VP, which was, is our team doing enough? Are we driving, first of all, are we driving results, let alone driving them more efficiently? So obviously in the digital world, we've got Slack, we've got WeChat, we've got all sorts of different ways that we engage, WhatsApp, but are we doing enough to be able to make sure people are being seen? And I think the point that I made back to my VP was, the numbers tell you the story. What we want to do is to encourage our workforce to think more strategically and not be sitting at their desk just counting the time going past. And in fact, I think someone raised this question earlier. Performance has risen through this flexible working environment, at least for my team and what we've seen actually as a business. We've seen performance increase, and we've seen a much more connected engagement around some of those key teams that we work with, for example, marketing, HR, the legal team, we've seen much more engagement with them. And as a result of that engagement, there has been speed and execution when it comes to thinking about what the deliverables are. And one thing I did that was really interesting was I went back and reflected on that question my VP had asked. And I looked at the performance indicators from the team members that I had from the previous management and the new team members, and then looked at what their performance was this year. And I was pleasantly surprised to see all health indicators upwards of 20% and beyond in terms of where they were from their trajectory back in 2019 to 2020. So that was proof enough to me to be able to take that to leadership to say, look, remote working is working for us. It's not exactly going to work for everyone, but it is working across the board. And we're seeing much more efficiency when it comes to execution. What I do want to drive into is that strategic component of what else can we do? And then I think that is the piece that I think digitally we have to just get a little bit more connected up, because that collaboration piece, having people digest a problem and then come up with a solution to it, I think we still need that in-person connection, but it can be driven. I mean, ways I've been able to do that is drive what I call tiger teams. So I'll have a couple of problems that my management will come up with, or our team will come up with, and we will scale them and sort of say where they are from a practical point of view. We'll choose 2 of them and then build various meetings around them for just those specific individuals that can move the needle on those particular challenges. And because we've put focus and execution into only 2 of those challenges, we've been able to drive 80% of them as in terms of viability and solution orientation. So I think that's really helped. This next slide I want to really take you through very quickly is very much about repositioning benefits to the team. Quarterly mental health days, I think, are important and something the business has driven. Sick days and just repositioning them to think about, do you need to have a day off because of mental health? Let's give you that day off. And then just supporting that human connection. I think those are all key in driving the conversation we want to drive. This is my last slide. I just wanted to give you a very quick synopsis, which was, this has been really important for me personally as a journey, because I looked at elements around being tangible in an intangible world, thinking about innovation, the practicalities of it, coming up with agility when it comes to working with various individuals, and really thinking about ways to structure that connectivity and building that authenticity.